Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to another conversation at the Georgetown Tea House. This evening, we continue our conversation from last week where we were talking about being equally or unequally yoked. All right, so go ahead, like, share the broadcast, and call a friend or two and let them know that we are on live. The Georgetown Tea House is on live. All right, and we'll be right back.
Examine any profound event in the Bible or in the history of Christianity, and one is sure to recognize the consistently pivotal role of conversational interactions. We see this at play in Genesis, the first book, where through a series of conversations we witness the fall of our species and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The conversation between God and man, the conversation between man and woman, the conversation between the woman and the devil, and so on. At the Georgetown Tea House, we know the great importance and pivotal role that conversations often play in our lives on this earth. And thus, we will seek to engage in the types of conversations that are insightful, stimulating, and thought-provoking. And yes, occasionally a trifle boring. Our hope is that with each visit to the tea house, we can become better aware of who we are, of our relationship with God, and where we stand with each other and the rest of humankind. And yes, through it all, there will be music. For music, it had been written, is the food of love, and God is love. Join us every Monday evening on Facebook and YouTube Live for Conversations at the Georgetown Tea House, a Gospel Side of Me production. Please, do bring along a cup of tea or a glass of your favorite juice.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here again. I saw you last night, and then I'm here again tonight. My name is Marcel. For those of you who don't know me, you might be here for the very first time. And we welcome you. We welcome you. And tonight I have some friends again with me. You missed your boy Cleon for a bit, man. Cleon, we missed you. I could not do the thing about, the notification bell and thing. You say it so beautifully. And I missed you. We missed you. And then we have Uncle Augie is in the house. And I left the beautiful lady for last. Chanel, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come back and chat with us. We're supposed to be having our beautiful friend Miriam Corlett. She'll be here shortly. I think she got bunked off. And our friend Dallas as well. He's supposed to be coming back. Because like I said, we are picking up from where we left off last week with regards to being equally or unequally yoked. All right. So come on in, friends. Come on in. I want to see you. I want to see the numbers. I want to see you sharing and liking the broadcast. All right. And call a friend. Don't be selfish. I want to see you tagging your friends and letting them know that we're on live and that they need to be here. Here is a place to be. All right. Last night, for all of you who came on last night, I want to say thanks. We had fun. If you weren't here last night, you missed out. We had so much fun celebrating our mothers. We had fun. And I hope that and that you continue that vein of celebrating your moms. They are special people. All right. So before I go start talking too much, last week, I'm jumping right into it. I'm just going to tell you where we're jumping in from. Last week, Trevor Benjamin, he made a comment. He said one of the biggest problems that many people send is that many people send their representatives to date, and they marry another person shows up in the marriage, right? One of the biggest problems, he said, is that many people send their representative to date, get married, and in time, the real person shows up to the party, and you don't recognize them. All right. Yes, so we're gonna talk about that. But before we start yapping, I'll play some music from Roy Stewart, a friend of mine, and I know you'd love him. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Roy. Powerful, powerful stuff. You will when you believe. Man, we had so much fun here listening to Roy last night as well. Thank you so much again, Roy. Um, Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us again tonight, guys. In the chat, I see a few people. I just wanted shout out a few people. I see Blondell and Janelle and Miss Jennifer and Cindy Hackett, Purpose Driven, Arendella. These people, Lindsay, these people are here, always supporting us. And we want to shout you out. We want to say thank you. Thank you so much for always showing support. Make sure you tag a friend or two, let them know that we're on. All right. So we're, like we said earlier, we're talking about the issue of being equally and unequally yoked. And then we're going to go into some other stuff. We're picking up from where we left off last week. All right. And we're talking about, we're going to talk about, the Trevor Benjamin, like I said last week, mentioned it wasn't the same person who dates you end up marrying you. It's always somebody else, right? Because they show up, the usual polite, accommodating, understanding person went out the door, and this kind, adorable gentleman or lady, because it could go both ways, turned out to be either physically abusive or mentally abusive to each other. All right. So I'm going to put it out to you. What does a Christian man or woman, how does a Christian man or woman deals with this? Anybody can just jump in and start the ball rolling.
How do they deal with what would be the question?
Yes. How do they deal with the fact that the person had changed, that a few months or even years into the relationship, that they were no longer kind and respectful and accommodating and understanding, right? They've become abusive, both physically and mentally, or even, physically and mentally, or either or. But it just wasn't the same person.
I don't want to be naive or be facetious in any way, but it's kind of a bit difficult that you will not see no signs of a red flag unless you are so engrossed in your feelings for the individual. Sometimes we may have inclinations and they may not necessarily be true, but you have decided that this is going to be for better or worse. This is just my perspective on this view. And therefore, if you would have not done your necessary research and you would have decided that you're going to have your bed made this way, then sweetie, sir, it's got a lie in it.
I wish it was that.
And just as when your linen gets dirty, you wash it, then therapy and counseling and much prayer will be your portion.
I wish it was that easy, because yes, with some people, right, you do see red flags, and yes, you can, like we spoke about a few weeks ago when we were talking about, somebody might tell you, oh, I don't like the way that shirt fit you, or I don't like the way the pants fit you, the pants a little too tight or something, and you're seeing before that they're, I think there's gonna be a little problem. But in the case when somebody, this man is, I'm telling you, accommodating, he's polite, he's caring, he's all of those nice things, and you're not seeing, he's not even letting, he or she is not even letting you, is not letting anything slip then. I mean, they're that good.
That's a real wolf in sheep's clothing, my girl.
Well, I would think that.
I want to unmute my mic just to jump in and follow up with Cleon. So and based on what you said, so you with the person, and then eventually you find out they're different, and you would have specified psychologically and emotionally and physically abusive and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So how do you deal with it? Prior to that, like the best self would show up. You don't know what would have caused that change. You can check in, try to tap in. Is it my behavior that's influencing about the physical part? I mean, that's something that that person would have to work on wholeheartedly, along with counseling and so on. But if you find that these changes are negative, they're not for the positive, these behavioral changes, then you can sit and assess. You can have we'll bring in Miriam on this one, right, for the counseling and so on. But you can sit and assess what would influence this. Is it my behavior? Is it something around us? Because sometimes you go into the relationship and you have these preconceived notions as to what will happen, the whole fairy tale dynamic. But then when the realities of life hit you, you got to pay bills. It's not always fairy tale. You got to get your bills covered on time, food on the table. And if kids are in the midst, right, and you didn't really plan for them, all of these things can trigger, persons to be moody, miserable, and all these things. So when you come in with the preconceived notions, and then you find that it's not smooth sailing, you might lose a home, you might lose your car, you lose your job.
Yeah,
These are some of the things that can trigger changes in persons. So it's better to always assess and not to say, oh God, I married this man and he just changed. It could be a sense of, I'm not achieving what I would like. So let's say he's not able to provide financially in the way that he would have preferred, because you lose your job as soon as you get married.
well,
Then he's
you run ahead of me, child.
you understand, you're gonna face. So you gotta first look at what can influence it. You can't just say, okay, well, you moody, you miserable, and I can't deal with this. You gotta actually sit, try to figure out what is happening, what's the basis of all of this. Open the lines of communications a little bit, your communication a little bit more, make it a conversation. And if you are the person who's recognizing a difference and you're in control of all your faculties and you're not the one, then you can initiate that process. Put aside self, initiate that process by trying to see if you can set up a date night. And then there's also the approach for reassuring. Sometimes you need to reassure the person that you're with that, you know, um, you may not hit all the targets that you may have set out, but that don't mean I love you less. That don't make you less of a person. So sometimes, though, the conversation with regards to reassuring the other person, and then open communication, I would go in those directions.
Okay, Miriam. Before Miriam, welcome, Dallas. Welcome to the crew. It's good to see you again.
Sorry to be late, man. How y'all
That's
doing?
all right. That's all right. You're good. You're good. We're still here. Yes, Miriam.
Well, I don't want to rebut what Cleon said, but
Yes.
that stance is not usually the best stance to take. Where I choose this person, and basically you make your bed, you gotta lie on it like that. Because a lot of times, what we call people gaslight you. They come up with all these wonderful things. An abuser never show their real self in the beginning. They're always the nicest people. And there's something intuitive in a woman that says, you know what, sometimes this guy is too good to be true. When you start to get that sense, you have to recognize it. You might not even see a red flag, as they would call red flags. But if you get this intuitive sense that, you know what, once you start seeing them becoming overly jealous, possessive, they're trying to alienate you from your family and friends, controlling, telling you where to go, what to do, what to wear. I don't like seeing you that. I don't want to see you. You know what I mean? When they start to behave in certain manner that would suggest, that there's some hidden agenda there, then is when you need to investigate and check that behavior out. Because there's not openly a red flag that sometimes you see. And what I've seen with a lot of women is that it starts out really wonderful, and the young lady alluded to that sometimes circumstances change. You might need them as a baller to getting the money, and a lot of people, you see, especially with pro footballers, when they getting all this money, then when they lose a contract or something happens and circumstances change, they tend to change with it. So a lot of times it's not necessarily they were like that before, right? And as they say, hurting people hurt people. Some of them may have been abused themselves and they perpetuate the abuse, right? And of course, we know there are several types of abuse. A lot of people only cover the physical abuse and the sexual assault and so on. But
Right.
there are several types of abuse where
Definitely.
mentally they control you, emotionally they scar you every day. You know what I mean? Verbally, they tell you things that really hurt, and say things like, oh, without me you can't make it, How would you do? Where were you before me? And look how you get fat. Nobody would take you, like, and stuff like
Yes,
that.
those kinds
So
of.
things like that would kind of cause you to feel really small. And once a person is insecure, you find that they tend to project that onto their partner or their spouse.
Okay.
So that is something that people need to look out for.
Or before somebody else take up, we'll just take a short break. We'll be back.
It seems like I might just need to.
Oh, we're back. We're back. Miriam, you've said a lot in terms of the different types of abuse people can suffer. Um,
Yeah.
and I know it to be true. I've heard enough stories. But I want to, with regard to the counseling aspect, after you've endured all of this, right? And you would have decided to go to, let's say, a priest or a pastor. Who remember marriage is a big thing. Marriage is not something to you're married today and you're gone tomorrow, right? So I go to him and I say, look, my marriage is in trouble, right? And he says to you, you told him, you highlight a few things, he's called me all these names, he's saying I'm fat, and all these negative things, and he says to you, you're married, and you know I think you should. He basically told her to stay. There's nothing to do. I mean, you're married. You got to. I mean, God bless this union. You got to stay.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the Christian way, and I've been there where there were situations where you said, "Oh gosh, this is what's happening," but the Bible would have said marriage is honorable and you shouldn't leave unless there is certain prerequisites to leaving. If it's abuse, they say the Bible don't say anything about that. However, there are certain social things that should dictate what is right and what is wrong. And a lot of pastors, unfortunately, fall on when it comes to that in counseling. So that's why a lot of Christian women find themselves staying because, the Lord didn't tell me to leave, and they would endure certain abuses, which is really not right, and even culturally, in our culture, divorce or separation is frowned upon. So whether or not if the person in threatening to kill you, burning you, like literally physically abusing you, then a lot of the times they will not encourage you to leave. Even in cases where there were physical abuse and they abuse your children and all of that, they would still counsel you to stay, which as a social worker, that is really not the right way to go. Of course, it took me years to get to that position, but unfortunately, that is the teaching that the so-called Christians or religion teaches, and it makes a lot of women feel like they're trapped and in bondage, and they cannot leave because the word says you can't leave. Whatever the man does. So that is something that needs to be addressed. But as social workers, we train that once there is any form of abuse, you have to build the resilience of the woman. You have to ensure that because it breaks down their self-esteem. So you have to build resilience, make sure that there's what we call an escape plan, that the woman and if they have children involved will be safe. Because the first step would be the safety of the woman who is being abused and the child. And I say women because the majority of the cases are women. There are very few far in between men that are being abused now, right? But generally, it is perpetuated by men. So
Okay.
that's one of the first things that we're trained to look for, to ensure that you have a safe space. There's some safe houses, there's some referrals that you can do to ensure that a lot of women don't leave because of financial instability or insecurity, right? So they don't have like something to sustain them financially if they do. So because of that, they tend to want to stay in a situation because this is the breadwinner. Even if they know, I've seen kids, even if they know and you show them that this man, this stepfather is abusing your daughter, and they would still stay even if they are aware of it. So there's a lot of anomalies involved and variables involved in this. It's really a complicated, there's no straightforward answer. But what I would say is that the church has failed a lot of women with telling them to stay in abusive relationships. And I say
Yes.
that without any apology.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I
Dallas, you
think,
want
yeah.
to jump in? Go ahead, Dallas.
No, so I can agree with that. I don't think I don't think God expects a woman to submit to foolishness. Like, period. If you lead the way God leads, your marriage is gonna be cool. Like, hands down. And I think I wasn't following like from the beginning because of course I came in late. But you see this thing called discernment. Discernment is especially as
Big.
husbands, plays a very critical role from the beginning of any relationship. And we spoke about some of the things last week whereby
Yes.
we don't talk about stuff. We don't like really get down to the root of family history, ancestral, hereditary, environment, things that would influence a person's thinking, things that would influence how they react. Like, what's your trigger points? Like, if I, leave the toilet seat up, you can burn down the house. Or, if I cook and I put too much salt in the food, am I gonna hit, like, stuff like that? Like, what's each person's trigger point? And I feel like if we're walking in obedience when it comes to building and growth and growing with each other, there's a lot of things that we could weed out along the way, and prevent us from making certain mistakes, whether it be a mistake within building a relationship or just the mistake of choosing the wrong person altogether. As I'm saying. So discernment, big thing. And it goes back again to what we alluded to last week, the fact
Yes.
that we don't pray as much anymore. We don't speak
I
God.
was just, I was, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
I
See?
was just going to ask that question. Um,
Straight up,
we,
shameless plug.
we talk exactly, we're talking about, you've now seen all these traits, and I mean, you're back against the wall, and you're praying. I mean, when do you stop praying? What was like the timeline between you praying and you deciding to go and seek counsel because you're at your wits end. You're really at a loss now.
I mean, like,
How much does
look,
prayer really works in instances like those?
look,
Prayer works. Without question, Marcel, I want to say prayer works. That's without question. And then I want to agree with my brother over there that's saying, discernment is key, but discernment is also rooted in education. So as long as our young women and our young men are educated properly beforehand, right, then they will be able to, in if not all, in the majority of the cases, they'll be able to make the right decisions. But then when circumstances change and the person is affected by those circumstances and they also change for the negative, they're calling you all these things and whatever, it's also rooted in how you view yourself. There's a lot of self-esteem issues happening. So when the self-esteem issues play in, then that that will affect how you react. But then if you're a strong person, the partner, whether male or female, they need to get themselves snatched all the way together very quickly for somebody who's very strong. They will not be sitting there allowing that abuse. They got to get themselves all the way together. And then once you, because come on, that there's going to be disagreements and differences. but then you pray about it, yes, but then at the same time, faith without works is dead. You got to act on
Yeah.
it. You got to get yourself together. And if you can't get yourself together, then things are going to go left very quickly. Because if I'm going to modify my behavior to try to accommodate you when we pray and we talk, and we're going to be faithful about this, but then you still want to insist on, especially if it's with a Seventh-day Adventist who, well, another Christian person who knows the truth and so on. We would have worked it out. We ticked all the boxes. We're compatible in so many ways. And then, these little things, then you talk about it, like I was saying last week. If it's an issue with a toilet seat, don't just you talk about it so that it doesn't escalate to this point, or else you will have to get yourself together, because it's not going to affect you, especially if children are involved. It's going to also affect them. So you don't want that to escalate. Nip it in the bud right away. What is happening here? What is this? And you talk about it. I don't like this. You don't like that. Have a conversation together. We pray about it so we're on the same page. And then you
Do
move
you?
forward. That's the only way.
Yes. But I was gonna when you say yes, prayer works. I was asking how.
Yeah, it works.
Maybe
It
yeah, but
guides you whether to stay, go,
I
get
If
up.
you
mean,
can
this is a
can
serious
we have to
yes
start
because when
pray
like,
how to get
exactly.
the hell out?
Yes, because are
Mhm.
we praying for the same things, right? I mean, how we praying? Are we praying that you stay and I'm praying because I'm comfortable in it? You know.
Pray
so
for
I'll,
the
I'll
strength to get out.
so I'll
Thank you
say
for that, Kenneth.
I'll
Thank
say
you. Welcome, welcome.
I'll say this, and I don't know why I keep bringing up a lot of my points from last week. Remember last week I was talking about choosing my friends and the kind of fruit that they bear. Like every relationship has a certain amount of fruit or fruit that it will bear. In prayer, um, if you don't see certain fruit, like you have a right to question whoever it is. Well, your partner, whether it's in friendship or whatever, that you got a right to question, because if you and God like this, and you're really praying about this, and this person really bound and deeply rooted in wherever they're rooted in, then you really could take a look at this thing and be like, yo, you life in really bearing the kind of fruit, or we in bearing the kind of fruit that we should bring together. I'm not saying that you're gonna stop praying, but you still have to know when to draw the line and be like,
Mhm.
I really in an abusive situation.
And at that point, prayers won't work.
I need to. I'm not. I mean, so, like honestly, sometimes prayer takes long. Like the Bible talks about Daniel fasting for how much days, and
Answer was given.
he had to send God had to send the archangel to really war on Daniel's behalf, because the answer was sent, and it took a while for it to get there. So in the meantime, you got to be able to pray stuff through, develop strategies that will be able to kind of help you get through whatever you're going through in the meantime. So that if Soldier Man, God really get to Soldier Man heart and he come around, we could really work on this thing. Or if Soldier Man bent in your own way and decide he want to go in this direction, then I don't think God would allow any woman or any person that's really connected to him, that is honoring their marriage, that is being faithful in whatever areas they need to be faithful in, and he would allow them to suffer. You
Okay.
understand what I'm saying?
Right.
I,
Okay, Augie. Definitely.
that's just my opinion.
Let me just say this. I don't believe it is God who allows us to suffer. We choose to suffer because in everything we have choices that we make. Ephesians 5 25 to 33 speaks about, and everybody likes to talk about that, but it's a command that is given to both the husband and the wife. How the husband is expected to treat the wife. And
I was just gonna mention that.
if you are the woman, and you are in a relationship with your God, who you first love, that would have joined you with this other person, and you want to be a full-blown idiot and allow the man to not love you as Christ so loved the church, because love don't beat up people. Love don't tell people about the stink about the mother and tell people about all sorts of different things. If it wasn't me, you would have never be surviving. It wasn't you. It is the Lord who has allowed me to survive, to deal with you. Just as Chanel said, if you don't have that self-value for your own self. And Miriam alluded to it in the beginning, both male and female. If you don't know who you are in God,
Yeah, identity.
being together with somebody isn't going to make you better.
You know, last week.
You're an idiot. So
That's
for
But
me,
Cleon,
there comes to a point, it comes to a point where prayer will take the long time because God is allowing you an opportunity to get out. And like I said on our show before, run.
But I
Run.
thought you say make your bed that
Okay.
safe. Don't you
Wait, wait,
remember?
Remember, this is a conversation. So points
it's
of
a
view do change.
conversation. It's a conversation.
All right. Okay.
It's be on the
Stay-
same
But
page. We will all
Marcel,
have the
before you
same
go,
view.
Marcel, before you go, we gotta ponder on this. Love is patient, love is kind, love is long suffering. So
Long
if we want to put the love principle, right, it means that yes, we pray, but remember, faith without works. It said you must exercise patience. I'm not saying you get up and you
All right.
communicate. You must have open communication and you must be patient. But I want to when we come back to talk about how long should we suffer in long suffering.
Exactly. Okay. I like that. Okay. We'll have we'll take a break with something inspirational from Miriam.
What has become of love? What has become of trust, hope, and charity? Why can't we all live in peace and harmony? What has become of love? Whatever happened to being a brother's keeper? Or just looking out for humanity? Tell me what has become of love? Tell me what has become of love? We're living in a time where nothing is sacred, and love's trivialized. Children are the victims. There's so many casualties. We need to stop and recognize and live consciously, or we will have to pay the price. What has become of love?
Where is the love? Very, very fitting. Very fitting. So here we got a lot of comments. We're gonna try to bring them up as quickly as possible as the points come up. But good question, Chanel. How long should
One suffer.
Chanel, the suffering? How long should long suffering be, boo?
Well, we're talking about love, and if love is kind, patient, and long suffering, and we like the kindness and the patience and the long suffering, the humility of it, it's not puffed up, then it's also long suffering. What do we do then? How do we apply that aspect to relationships that are challenging, right? Relationships that are, well, I notice you guys are focusing more on the physical and emotional, the abuse and so on, not they just not mood swings based on circumstances and so on. So what do we do then? I would like to proffer that we need to teach young men and young women what to accept, how to be loved, correctly, what to allow, what not to allow. What do we tell them now when those conditions are not ideal and they're encountering these challenges? What do we say to them? So these are some of the things that we need to, that is where, like I said, you rely on your prayer, and at the same time you must keep your communication lines open, because if you don't say what is bothering you, what is a problem, what is a challenge, then it cannot be addressed. So if somebody's speaking to you in these harsh tones, hey, you fat and you this and you that, yeah, I know I'm fat and all these things. You can tell me that I'm fat, you can tell me about me, but how do you say it? If it's in unkind ways, then I can tell you, I don't like your tone. That is not, as grown as some people be, they don't even understand that, the tone is important. But you must communicate. That's my thing. As long as it's affecting you mentally and psychologically, then it's also going to eventually affect you physically. You're going to be sick. You're going to be unwell. You're not going to function as you should. So I'm just saying that as long as you get to that point where you're being beat down, then it needs to be addressed. And if it's not addressed, and if you're trying to address it and there's no good response, then sometimes you need to take a little bit of drastic steps so people can understand really, what is happening, what you may miss, what you may lose, what is at risk here, and then hope and pray that it works out for the best. But as long as you're going to be hit, the physical aspect, I would go with what Brother Cleon is saying. Put on your running shoes and run.
So, Chanel, my question is, what are these drastic steps you can take? Because I want to know.
Okay, drastic steps. When I say drastic steps, I would say
Because drastic is
move away for a bit.
extreme. Like,
Yeah, well, drastic, that's extreme. You pack up your stuff and you go somewhere else. We'll call Miriam up and she will tell us where to go.
I'm sorry, I'm playing devil's advocate.
I know. We'll call
Because
Miriam up and we'll say, listen, Miriam, I've had enough of this psychological and physical abuse. Tell me where's the first safe house, where's there's a safe place I can go, because this man, like, he ain't understanding. Or this woman is not getting it. She's always trying to hit me or something. We call Miriam because we acknowledged last week that we need Miriam, right, Miriam?
I was just about to,
Not
So we
necessarily
call,
we need counselors. We need
I was just
right,
counselors.
we
And
need
we need,
counselors like
sometimes
Miriam.
so before, I would advocate that even before you go to a counselor, there's always like a big sister friend, somebody that is like a mentor, somebody that you can call that can also help
Yes,
you
we
out.
did
You know what I mean? You
establish.
have to have
True.
that support system in place, because
Agreed.
not every time there is a counselor available or there's a safe house available. Depends on where you live. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
Miriam. Yes, go ahead.
those resources may not always readily be available. And as I alluded to earlier, you should have what we call an escape plan,
yeah.
like something that you can plan. Like if you could call a friend, even if they're abusing you, whatever, there should be a safe word. There should be something that you can say, even in front of the person, that they wouldn't even know that you're sending a code. Hey, this is happening. Come get me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's true.
So there must be something in place that we train women that, and train the kids as well. You know what? You leave some clothes by a granny, just in case we have to leave in the middle of the night and go if this is happening. Because a lot of times they don't just abuse the mother, they abuse the children as well.
Mhm.
So
I was
she
saying,
needs to take them from that situation.
But Miriam, if a woman if a man hits a woman, should she fight back? Should she learn to fight?
Just how him slap, you slap him back, and harder too, and then run.
No, I'm just
There will be a
saying,
big old
should we
brawl
if I
there.
mean if you're being hit and somebody hit you, is there any point where you can say I can fight back?
no, but remember,
You
you're a
know,
nice
a lot of
Christian.
times,
This is a
as
nice
much as you
Christian
want to
couple.
fight back, a lot of times, here what happens, there is this mental control that even if you might be bigger and stronger than this person, you will not, because they've already controlled you mentally. So even if you want to fight back, some women fight back, yeah, but what happened? They end up getting joked with a knife, carried out in a body bag and all of that. And a lot of times they don't, because they want to safeguard their children. So they know if you have a big brawl, sometimes they can get hurt. You know what I mean? So it's not that I won't advocate that you fight back, right? If you can fight back. Yeah, but what will be the end result of that? Where will
Yes.
that get you? It's like
That's so true.
violence begets violence. You have to find other ways of dealing with disagreements and conflicts.
Okay, I mean, I hear everything
But
that's
we can't fight back if we can. That's what you're saying.
I hear everything.
Never said that. That's what you're
Uncle
trying
Augie,
to
you
do.
gotta Uncle
You
Augie, you
see,
gotta turn up your volume a little bit.
Chanel, think about
They're
the
chopping you out.
consequences of
Yeah, I
fighting
know.
back.
I'm
That's
just
all
like
I'm saying. Is that
I'm just being the devil's
even if
advocate,
you
like
can
my friend over
represent,
there.
if you need to fight, trust me, as a woman, if somebody messes with my
Mhm.
kid, with my child, in that case, I will fight you to the end until my child safe. You understand? But a lot of the times, I'm saying an abuser usually has this mental control and this emotional control over the person that even if they can't, they just don't.
Uncle Augie, you were saying,
Okay, I mean, I'm listening to everything that's going on there, and we're talking about Christian relationships. Quite often, we pen people to be Christians that don't deserve that name, that title at all. If
Not
you're in,
hearing him.
you can't hear me.
Yeah, I can hear. I can hear.
yeah,
I
How
I'm
about
um
hearing
now?
him too.
yeah,
Can you
I
hear me
can
now?
hear him clearly.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me
I
now?
hear you. Miriam, hearing him?
I
Okay.
think it's probably Miriam's
If
volume, but
if we're in a relationship and we are deemed as Christians, there are certain things that we know that we wouldn't even entertain, period. If you're in a relationship that's going to be physical, that's not a Christian relationship. We often go and we put ourselves in situations, then we want God to get us out. If the same prayer that you prayed and rushed the prayer, now you want to pray and ask God to get you out of that. He didn't put you in it. So I mean, it's one thing when you say, okay,
Leon's
well,
point right there. Yeah.
what am I gonna do if this happens? Mary, I understand what you said about you gotta come up, you make sure that you have like a plan or something. If you have to pre-plan your escape,
You
something is
shouldn't be
wrong
there.
right there.
Mhm.
These are all the different red flags. We go into relationships and you know from the door, this person has things that you will need to change. If you're a Christian, you're not getting into that relationship because God has already told you this is not for you. He's missing those characteristics in which you're looking for. But we tend to get into them and we say, oh, don't worry, I'm a Christian and God will get me out of it. No, you're a Christian, but is he really a Christian? You're a Christian, is she really a Christian? Because the abuse can happen on either side. So at what point do we say, okay, look, I really am a Christian and I'm going to trust God through it? Period.
Because and that's a good point you're making, Augie, because you remember we are, as Christians, I mean, we talk about God, that God could, once you go to him, he's going to be the one to solve whatever issue that we're going through prayer, of course, right? But when do we decide that, okay, it's this bad, and that no amount of prayer is going to fix this, because it's that bad?
So somebody else could fix something that God can't?
Um,
Careful how you answer that one.
which is a vital point. One has to deal with the reality of what they're dealing with. And I'm not a counselor, but I always believe people know what their issues are. Have they fully cognitively decipher how they're going to deal with these issues? Maybe, maybe not. That's where the counseling comes in, where the person will be able to help them to understand you are going through more than you should be going through. And when it comes back to the long suffering, I am so glad that the Bible never made it to say, well, you will suffer long for 2 months or 3 months. Because if 24 hours is too much a long suffering for me, I gone. So I'm not going to tell somebody that you should stay 3 months or 2 weeks. I would not put a stipulated time on it, because the amount of verbal and mental trauma that people will be going through, one may be able to deal with it while another may not even be able to suffice it. So for me, as you rightly said, if God had said to you, or you decided that you never wanted to consult God and you're in it, then it is not the best thing to do for your mental health, the mental health of the other person. Think about your other family members who are going to be crying, oh, they killed she, they kill her. No, you have to think. You can't just think in the moment about what you may be thinking. Oh, yes, if I talk with him and I put down the seat, it may change the situation. Because there's sometimes you can have the best of dialogues with people, and if they're hell bent in the mind that there's some sort of demonized, possessed demons, you just gotta cut and run. There's some wars you're in worth fighting for. Save yourself and live to see another day. That's just my view. Long suffering is dependent on the individual situation.
Uncle Augie, you agree with Sharon?
Am I hearing
God
too
is
well
able
right
to
now?
fix anything.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with her too. God is able to fix anything.
I really
Uncle
do.
Augie,
I really do think.
Oh, go ahead, Marianne. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you hear Miriam?
Miriam, you hearing?
Okay. I wasn't hearing Cleon just now, but at the end of the day, right? We're talking about how the person that you married or you started dating turns out to be another person, or one day you wake up and this is a monster that's hitting you or abusing you in some way. And a lot of times, last week we alluded to what are the deal breakers. And the
Exactly.
deal breakers are sometimes should be addressed prior to marriage or prior to a commitment. And if you know that, hey, a deal breaker is cheating, a deal breaker is hitting or abuse of any form, that should be discussed previously. So when you pack your bags and you leave, that there shouldn't be a problem when you do, because you had already discussed what were your deal breakers.
Right now, okay, let's go back to I agree with you, because if he hits you or she hits you, they're not a Christian, because Christ is not going to do that. So at that point, you are not a Christian. So do you think you're in a Christian relationship if you both are not Christians? No. Anybody who is going to be Christ-like and follow the Christ-like principles, then they get the Christ-like benefits because you're a Christian.
Yeah.
If you're carrying on like this, that is not who you married. So by all means, should you stay because it's no longer a marriage? It does not meet the criteria. Does that need a counselor? No, that needs common sense. But if you're
Which
going
is
with a
common.
Christian, that's it.
That's
A Christian
common
is
sense.
not going to exemplify these behaviors. By their fruits, ye shall know them.
Somebody
If
said
you
Exactly.
ask God for something and that's not what you got, at the point in which you find out, yeah, definitely, that's time to leave, because you asked God for a Christian and you didn't wait for the Christian. The Christian will not have that type of behavior that we're talking about. So let's not say that Christian, if he's a Christian, then he does this. No, if he does this, he's not a Christian. So take that title from him, then deal with him as a regular person.
I agree with Uncle Augie, and Miriam mentioned this a bit earlier, that The title sometimes that we put on people, and from a societal standpoint, we in the Caribbean have been cultured in such a way, oh, you have to stay in it for the children. Your grandfather and your grandmother, they going through their hell, come hell and high water. Yeah. No, somebody just need to puncture a hole and float. And like you, no, I like to be the hyper one sometimes. But on a serious note, there are times when you have got to decide, I am not going to follow what society says. As long as my relationship with God, because at the end of the day, I have to give an account for my life. You, who the pastor that join us together, you're gonna be standing before God and ask, and then God and ask you, but why you say when he slapping you? When I told you in my word, a husband should love his wife as Christ so loved the church. So you don't want to go through another crucifixion. Point is, if you are going to sit in a relationship and be abused in any form, that's a choice you make as a Christian or not as a Christian. Point blank. And like I usually say, if you choose to stay in it, then use the idiot, and you will have to take the results that you get.
Cleon, don't call people an idiot. The point is, right?
Miriam is not idiot. Like sometimes you know some people.
No, one thing
When,
is,
when,
a
when
lot of times there is
pacify
more to
them, I
people
know it's not the
saying,
right thing to say, but when you pacify things, people become comfortable with a pacifier. When it doesn't even do anything for you, but just soothes the situation for a moment. Sometimes you have got to be so blunt with people, and that is one of the things with the church. We have begin to just blanket things for people, and people begin to say, oh, well, no, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. No, use the idiot if you want to stay with him. And you will
Uncle
yourself be
Augie,
an idiot.
yes,
oh
I'm going
my
to jump
God, Clea, you still call people idiot. The
in. Yeah, Uncle
women
Augie said,
the women unfortunately who choose to stay, and I agree with Cleon on that point when he said it's a choice. And a lot of times people feel like they have very limited choice when they're in this situation. That if I am supposed to move, where gonna go? How am I gonna sustain myself? How am I gonna sustain my children? How am I gonna look after you understand? So once there's a support system in place, a lot of people may not be from low income families and all. There are people who are well educated that are still in abusive relationships because they feel as though they don't have a lot of other options, right? So if options are presented to them, they will very well know that, well, hey, I don't have to sit and take this like Oracle. I don't have to take this. I'm going home. You can do that, right? But it, you can't paint everybody with a brush and say, oh, they're idiots because they stay. A lot of times people have feel like they have no choice. And unfortunately, a lot of women come out of these situations in body bag. In Guyana, the statistics are very, very high with women being killed at the hands of their abusers, right? So we have got to change that. We really got to change that mindset and help. Counseling alone doesn't help. We need support system. We partnered with a woman who has like a safe house, partnered with people who can help them get small loans to start their own business so they can sustain themselves and their family. Things like that is what helps to solve this problem. And the church needs to step up and stop telling people that they got to stay and grin and bear and take it.
Miriam, I also want to add the aspect of the stigma from with regards to society and the stigma. That is a key factor that makes a lot of persons just sit, grin, bear, and be quiet, because when you stand up for yourself and you step out in this different dynamic, then the conversations come, and the assertions and the hints, and there's a whole stigma
Yeah.
attached to getting out and getting on with your life after that type of dynamic. But I wanted to just scale it down back a bit with regards to the marriage dynamic. So we're talking a lot about the physical abuse and so on, but then you may have that. I wanted to go back to where circumstances change and persons are off put it, because there are times when you can be acting in certain types of ways based on, like we said, these different things that may occur. Let's look at the dynamic of Abraham and Sarah. They got into the marriage. Remember I said earlier, all of the conditions did not pan out the way they wanted, they weren't able to have children. Right? How did Sarah act? And then I always like to look at the story, right? She would have influenced her husband to act in a certain type of way, which was not right. But then I also like to look at the story of Abigail. That's a story I always look at. She was married to a man that the Bible described as a hard man, right?
He was a
But
fool.
her character and her personal attributes, they weren't, it was, she didn't allow that to affect her. No, look at how the Bible described him as a hard man. The Bible also went on to say, you know what? David came and asked him for some help, and he didn't go on nice. In Naaman, he didn't go on nice. But the wife did not perpetuate that kind of behavior. She was still with him, knowing that he's a hard man. Hard man to get along with. Probably miserable, rude, always got something negative to say, scratch your teeth. You know how we say. But then, in those instances, what do we do? Right? So you allow, and there are times when, as a partner, your character or your behavior can help your partner, the other person involved. Right? When, like I said, if you have all your faculties intact and you're able to understand the dynamics better, then you are able to make changes in the whole situation. And I'm not talking about the abuse where they're beating you up, because like I said, if that's happening, you get up and go. So what about when you have these things that are considered, differences? Marcel was looking at, can we be different and yet maintain? Yes, we can. We can maintain. And going back to Sarah, at the end of the day, when Sarah decided to put out Hagar, what God tell Abraham, listen to your wife. Listen
Remember,
to your wife. She's your wife.
we're not
So
responsible for somebody else's behavior. We're responsible to how we respond and our behavior. We can't
exactly.
change anybody, and God made us with this will that he himself, as a gentleman, does not override our wills. If we choose to stay in something, then he can't override that. He's God, but he does not override our will if we choose something, because he's given us choice. And that's
Okay.
the most powerful thing.
Can I
All right.
just
We're
say
gonna
something?
just take a pause. Yes, I'll go ahead, and then I'll
I'll just say
play.
something real quick. I have one of these little miniature schnauzers, a little fluffy dog. And when we walk, you will see that her ears will prick up. That's reason number one. And then she will start to turn her head certain ways. Now, what I started to do from the time I see that ears go up, I said, bring that down. Why? Because now you look at it, when you see a pit bull coming towards you and she puts up those ears, the pit bull gets that communication with them, and it means, I want to fight. She started it, but because she's so little and fluffy, you don't see that. So it's not always the person who big and strong, and no, he didn't start it. That mouth that you run off and tell the man XYZ about his mother is the reason why you catch I'm not condoning the licks. It's the reason why you catch the licks. But when they get to the house, you're going to look at, wait a minute. I've seen instances the cops were called, and when they got there, the man's like, wait a minute, I'm the one who called. And the little woman sitting there like, We got to put things in perspective. You see the signs and you never know the full story. That's why I don't get into marriage situations, other people's businesses. No. I'll stay away from that, because it's not always the big one that finish it who started the behavior to begin with. That's just my opinion, Wally.
Yeah, well, I agree. I agree with him that a lot of times there are two sides, and we don't see the inner workings, like how the woman. There's something called amygdala that is in the brain that really is driven by testosterone in the men, and their strength is in the mouth, while the men's strength is basically in the fist. So a lot of times the woman will talk and provoke him, and that's a given. We all know that. However, the way you respond or react to those taunts and all of that is on you. It's not on the woman. Anybody can tell you anything. They can tell you about your mother, your children, whatever. But you should not react in violence. Yeah, and that is something that men need to be trained not to do.
That's true. I can agree with that. Like, and also just generally, I've had instances like I had a situation recently whereby I spoke, I was asked my opinion about something in a particular work environment, and the person said, "All right, cool. So I'm gonna bring this up with the boss." And what was spoken about, um, it made them look bad because they weren't supposed to be doing what they were doing, or rather they weren't pulling their weight. So they look bad. So instead of going to the boss, this person went to the people that weren't pulling their weight. So they came at me. I didn't go to talk about them. And then this whole thing blew up. I didn't know this whole thing blew up. And all these threats happened and so on. And I found out. And I had a choice to call a friend who was in law enforcement. Well, I did call him and I told him like this is what's happening. He said I could come and lock them up now. And I could have done it. But then I was like, give me a few days because I really need to think about this and pray about this. Because if I go in this direction, then this thing could really escalate a little more. And I don't want it to go in that direction. So I picked up the phone, called the person who I was supposed to call. It's like, listen, we need to have a conversation. If we're really trying to do this Jesus thing, and I try to deal with it as biblically as possible, lay a gift down at the altar if your brother got aught against you, that kind of way. And sometimes you just got to take that step back. Everybody isn't going to do that because everybody is different. But it just takes a whole lot of maturity to be able to approach things a certain way. And again, for me, there are always warning signs from jump. Like there's always a trigger point, whether it be for a man or a woman. There's always a trigger point, but again, we get so caught up in
the nice parts of
and women know how
season.
to push men's buttons. Women know what they can say and what they can do to push the buttons. And Millie Sumner saying, be reminded that men are being abused in silence because of pride. A lot of men suffer emotional and they can't be physically abusive with men, but the mouth emotional, they tear them down, they tear down their ego. You know,
and not just that, I feel like sometimes
bully the men. You know what I mean? I've seen it in the adverse way as well. So it's not just women alone. And men are being abused in different ways as well. And neglect is abuse.
Yeah,
neglect is abuse.
And then you have to take into consideration the fact that there are men that don't respond for fear of a woman calling
losing the job and all of that too.
Losing the job, like if he responds, and a woman might be the person that's instigating everything or the root cause of it. And if he decide one time, he responding for 10 years, he decide one time that he respond, everything goes down south like quickly. So again, again, there are warning signs, and for me, it goes back all the way to not just courtship, but the individual. What's my identity, not just as a person, but in Christ, and what does God have for me more than do I want what God wants for me, or just do I want what I want for me? You understand what I'm saying? Marcel, you muted yourself.
Okay, hold your thoughts. I was saying hold your thoughts, and we'll take a musical break and we'll be right back.
I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. Without him, I could do nothing. Without him, I surely fail. Without him, I would be drifting like a Without him, how lost I would be. Jesus, oh Jesus, do you know him today? Please don't turn him away. Oh, Jesus, my sweet Jesus. Without him, how long I would be. How lost I would be.
Okay, thank you so much, Pastor Colin Swaving. Thank you so much for that wonderful rendition. That's one of our singing pastors. There's a man of God loves to preach, but he loves to sing. Thank you so much for that. Yes, guys, we've said a lot regarding the whole thing of, how we choosing our partners. And even though they might be Christians, the fact that they might be only Christians in name only. So there's still going to be some situations where we might be praying for different things, we're not necessarily praying to the same person as a result, because if you're not a Christian, if one is a Christian and one isn't, or doing things that are not, in keeping with whatever principle with the principles of the church and the principles of marriage. Then when trouble hits and we can't communicate anymore, and we can't even find the time to pray together, because I think prayer would only work if we're able to pray together, if we praying together, and sitting and talking about it. Working through our problems then, in other words. What then is our final decision when all else fail? When all else fail, what's our final decision in any situation where we feel that we can no longer communicate? You can no longer communicate with your spouse.
If you don't have a communication, then that relationship has failed.
Yeah, I think we all know.
Without communication, that's it. And that's communication between you and God as a Christian, and then you as your spouse. When we look at what Jesus did, Jesus's first thing was to socialize, to communicate, to deal with everybody. And then he sympathized. He saw that there was a need of some sort. And then after that, he served. Quite often in relationships nowadays, we don't serve. We're not trying to see how we can outlove each other. Let me love you more than you love me. I'm going to show you that I love you more than you love me. That when we take it from that portion, as Jesus did, he always served, then he saved. Once we have that process, it has no choice but to work.
So, Miriam, do you stay? Do you do counseling, or do you leave? When
You
it's
see,
all said and when it's all said and
counseling,
done.
I would say, right? Yeah, you said when all else fails, what do you do? When all else fails, you always go to Jesus. You always go to God, right? However, counseling helps because God, just as He uses surgeons to take out whatever tumor you have inside of you and remove that toxic cancer or whatever from you so that you can survive as a human being, that's what counseling actually does. It shows you where the toxins are, where the cancerous cells, what could lead to failure, basically, and help you repair. It's not a magic pill. It's something that both parties have to work on, and the council basically just holds up a mirror and guides you in the right direction. So no misconception that it's not a cure-all or end-all, right? However, counseling does help, but both parties have got to want the marriage to work. So even if you go to counseling, it's not always guaranteed that okay, this will work. It
Okay.
helps, but both parties has to want it. It's like any with any relationship. A lot of times when it unfortunately when it reaches to such a bad state, then is when they go to a counselor. And at the time one party probably has already checked out. You know what I mean? I've been there where it's like, okay, let's try counseling. And I recognize you go into the counselor like, hey, I don't care what they say, I ready to leave. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And sometimes they can literally hold up a mirror to you as a spouse and say, hey, this is where you've been wrong. This is where you didn't bring your A game. You didn't acknowledge when that person went out of their way to show you that they loved you. I remember last week we spoke about the five love languages. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They might be cleaning the yard and washing the dishes, but you just want them to sit down and spend time with you. So they may have been trying to show you that they loved you, but in a different
Different way.
language that you
Okay.
could not reciprocate or understand. You understand? So a lot of the times, right? There are solutions, but both parties have got to want to make this thing work. And as counselors, we can't control the outcome. Every client has
Yeah,
the right to
honestly.
self-determination, as we say. So it is imperative that we at least be open to the possibility that, hey, God, we invite you into this relationship, and you are the one who knows where you made us, and you know how to fix this. And if both parties can come together and agree on that, then you two agree if anything can be done.
Dallas, you're with me.
I'll agree with Miriam. Counseling, again, I'll always say, in as much as there is a spiritual aspect, there's always the practical to line up with God's word, like
Mm.
knowledge and application, like it's essential. The two should go hand in hand. Um, Counseling is very, very essential. Um, I know people that like you have a family therapist or a family counselor not because things are going wrong, but because again, I said last week, blind spots. Like everybody has a blind spot. Um, everybody has a blind spot. There are things that um, Miriam could probably see from her perspective that I'm missing out. That could run me into a brick wall and hurt me. The same for anybody else. And I think every couple should have that one person that they trust. Um, and I'll use a pastor for example, um, and not any pastor that's just gonna tell you kneel down and seek God, which is seeking God is not bad, but being able to apply scripture and watch it work and um, go through the mill with stuff, walk through stuff, pray through stuff, laugh through stuff, support each other um, through everything. Like counseling is not it's not bad. It's not bad. So I think if we look at it from that perspective from jump, I don't think we would end up at the result we're talking about. When should we leave or abuse or um, you know people checking out and all that stuff. Identify those, get people to identify your blind spots early so you could nip it in the bud. Of course, again, there's the willingness of that individual to actually want to do it. But I think if somebody's willing to do it, then certain issues we just won't have. So that's
All
my
right. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and we'll just come back and we wrap things up.
Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Here we go. Oh, no set of words could really express the way I feel. Oh, I'm so grateful for the joy and the peace that you give to me. I am so in love, so in love with you. I can't get enough of you. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. It gives a feeling inside that I cannot explain. It makes me go. Feel so good.
Makes me feel so.
Feel so good. Now my hands are lifted. Oh, when I think of the way that I lived and all of the things I did, I don't deserve the grace that you gave and the love that you lavished on me. It's insane that you are merciful, merciful and good. I am so amazed that I am loved by you. You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. It gives a feeling inside that I cannot explain. It makes me go. Feel so good.
It makes me feel so.
Feel so good. Now my hands are lifted.
It makes me feel so good.
You are merciful, merciful and good. I am so amazed that I am loved by you. It makes me go.
Makes me feel so.
Feel so good.
It makes me feel so.
Feel so good. Since all my hands are lifted. You see the depths of my heart. And you love me the same way. That's why my hands are lifted.
It makes me feel so.
It makes me go. Feel so good that you love me the same way. That's why my hands are lifted.
Nice, that was nice.
Dallas,
Good
thank
job,
you so
good
much.
job.
Guys, please ensure that you follow Dallas and Miriam on YouTube. They have the YouTube channel. You can follow Miriam Corlett. Sorry, she's on there.
Williams on YouTube, don't worry.
Miriam Williams. Okay, and I am Dallas on his website and on
And
YouTube.
Ford, yes.
And on YouTube is Dallas Ford.
Same
Dallas Ford.
everything
All right,
across
everything
all
across.
across all platforms, I am Dallas Fort.
Right. So please make sure you go, you follow them. Make sure you're sharing their music too. They're two talented Guyanese singers, recording artists. So please do that for us. You know, the Georgetown Tea House, we are all about supporting our artists and our GT and Caribbean people. All right. So please support them. All right. So guys, Cleon, you had something to wrap up. I know we decided that okay, we have to make sure to be choosing correctly, making sure that we are choosing. Somebody talk about compatibility, making sure that we truly are compatible, and then making sure that whatever we do is in keeping with our principles. All right. And if things get really, of course, we got God that we always gonna go to, but if things get really, really bad and out of hand, then we might need to talk to somebody. Anybody has gotten any last comment to make before Uncle Augie closes us out? Chanel?
Quiet boy.
Anybody?
Yeah, well, I kept my points. I was gonna close by saying, after listening to everything, you should love each other, but at the same time, you should keep learning not only about self, but about your partner and learning more about God, what He wants of you. In addition to that, I would advocate that you continue to pray together and keep the lines of communication open at all times. Most importantly, I also noted here that you should ask God what lesson is there in this circumstance or situation for you. There could be a lesson in obedience, stiff-neckedness, some lesson for self coming out of the situation. Try to
Right.
understand that. Once you're able to understand that, then it also helps you in understanding your role in the relationship. And at that point, once you're able to understand your role, then you will be able to know, am I going to be an Abigail, wise in the face of being with a hard person? Am I going to be a Sarah, right? Or Job's wife that's going to influence the partner to act out a character, whether you're being rude, like Uncle Long, you would have said, the way you talk about the mother and all these things. Am I going to push that person to act out of character, in these ways? So we fast forward that to the modern time. It may not be to go sleep with the handmaid, but I love the point that Uncle Long you made. You talk in certain types of ways. You tell the man about the mother, and you don't like hear it. Boom, act out a character like Abraham did, and then want row with the man when you get the consequences of the act, right? And so that will allow, or right, you can also be a Job, and through your patience and perseverance, you can influence that spouse, right, to see the error of the ways, like the wife would have said, curse God and die and all these things. He paid her no mind. Right, so get to know your partner, and then it will allow you to act in all of the right ways. It will help you once you know, because there's no one size fits all. It varies. So as long as you're able to get to know that person, you keep the communication lines open, continue to love in its entirety, right? Then you're able to act in the right way. Right, you're able to know how to act, and as long as you trust God. And Uncle Og, he reminded me last week when he said, you lean not on your own understanding. There are many times you don't understand, and challenges do come to make us stronger. It's a test, especially of character. But once, I want to close on this point, once it's abuse and you're knocking the people children, whether male or female, that needs to stop. Get yourself together. Somebody needs to be out of that space so that you can move on, in healthy ways, especially if children are involved in that dynamic. So that's just where I want to close.
Okay.
So I can add to that is that a lot of times we see the red flags and we don't discuss what are our deal breakers. And if they choose, you know what I mean? So you discuss those things. Communication is important, but it's what you're communicating and how you're communicating. What are your deal breakers? What are some of the things that I will take, and what are my boundaries? If you cross this boundary, then you're gone. or I'm leaving, something like that. But we also need to acknowledge when your partner does something good and show appreciation. Make
For
sure
it.
you know what your partner's love language is very important. It's an easy quiz. You can go online and type in the love languages and you do that quiz and you will know what are the two most dominant love languages for you as well as your partner. So you
Yep.
guys can love each other in their language. So you won't be basically speaking two different languages in the same relationship.
Yep.
You also affirm them or validate them, in ways that outside, I've seen partners affirm other people, say you look beautiful, you did well, you sang well, whatever, but your own partner, you don't even do that.
The partners
You
for
know
the
what I
street.
mean? Right. So it's like it's frustrating that you can compliment everybody else, but not even come and give
No,
me a decent
sir.
compliment. You know what I mean? So things
Yes.
like that. So make
No,
sure that you show
not at all.
affection. Women love to people to show affection to them. Most women. Some men are affectionate, yes, but affection is very, very important. So make sure that even if most Chinese men especially say, "Oh, I'm not the affectionate kind. I don't like hugging. I don't like those what do you call it, displays of affection and all of that." But it's necessary sometimes to come out of your comfort zone and ensure that you show them some, and of course, the occasional apology when you know you're wrong. Apologize. Don't be the big one who apologize. Don't just say in your pride and you're walking and then we call stonewalling the person and not talking and all of that. Simple, and things would be so much better if we always in everything acknowledge God.
Bro, you never
God
show any
should be
points
the
to get to say stuff.
center of every relationship. He is the foundation and he should be that thing that is holding you together. Because a lot of times we try to do things in our own strength, and if we just go to God with it, He will show us exactly where we are wrong and what we should do to correct it.
Oh gosh, Miriam, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Um, Cleon, it was so good having you again. It was so good
Yeah.
having you tonight. I love your spunk. You have to have it. So,
Mhm.
Uncle Augie, go ahead and take us out. Give
Cleon
us
is
something
good.
nice and juicy,
Mm,
and
mm,
so that
mm.
all the couples in the house would go home and try to find out their spouse or their partner love language and all the likes.
Yeah.
Get it
Setting the
together.
tone. Setting the tone, Uncle Augie. Go
Look,
ahead.
the Bible says that we are to be wise as a serpent, yet harmless as a
Hmm.
dove. So if we're following that, there's no licks carrying on. Well, not that kind of licks. It's just it also says no weapon formed against me shall prosper. So what is this? We gotta love. We gotta love. We gotta love. And just last but not least, remember that God sanctified marriage. What does the devil want to do? He wants to break it up. See, if he knows he send you the wrong partner, he ain't got to bother with you no more because that partner gonna send you where you need to go in here anyhow.
Sure.
So be careful in
Derail
how
the
you pick
destiny,
to
yes.
begin with. Once you're in the relationship, communicate, read the Bible, and follow everything that God says to do, and we gonna be all right. But the bottom line is, here's the bottom line. I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart. I got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I got the love of Jesus in my heart, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I got the love of Jesus in my heart. Check this one out. I know the devil doesn't like it, but it's down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I know the devil doesn't like it, but it's down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. I've got that good old Seventh-day Adventist message down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I've got that good old Seventh-day Adventist message down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I got the love of Jesus in my heart. Yes, I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. Yes. Keep it in your heart.
I'm always doing this. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for always sharing space with us. We look forward to seeing you here Monday after Monday, and you never disappoint. You're always sharing, so continue to share the link, continue to comment, and we'll see you back again next Monday. All right? Love you guys, and see you soon.
Shalom.
Examine any profound event in the Bible or in the history of Christianity, and one is sure to recognize the consistently pivotal role of conversational interactions. We see this at play in Genesis, the first book, where through a series of conversations we witness the fall of our species and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The conversation between God and man